All right, good evening, Council. I'm going to call to order the Council workshop for Tuesday, April 22nd at 6 o'clock, or immediately following the first meeting. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Any errors or omissions from the agenda is presented. Moved by Councillor Forbes. There's a seconder on the matter. Councillor Ma, call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded. Motion is carried. We have a set of meeting minutes that have been circulated with the package from the January 20th, 2025 Council workshop. Any errors or omissions from those from those meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Murray. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded. Motion is carried. All right. Well, the purpose of this evening's workshop is to discuss scenarios for the tax distribution levy and distribution of the 2025 tax levy. And so while normally in workshops, we don't actually pass a motion necessarily, what we're doing is we're passing a motion at the end to help our staff to prepare the bylaws for a consideration in public meeting. And so we kind of have to pick one so that they can take the next step and prepare them for that process. And so we will be seeking a direction from council this evening so that we can move forward with that. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate then, we do have some people who have come to speak to the item, and rather than having the council vote on it first and then have the feedback come at the end of the meeting, wondering if it wouldn't be more appropriate in this case to allow the 10 minutes of public input to occur at the front end of the meeting. I'm just going to see a lot of nodding heads at council. Okay. So before I go to Rick's presentation, I'm going to go to members of the public who would like to participate. Would anybody like to make a comment up to 3 minutes at the front end of the council workshop?
It's always me, yeah.
Jamie, welcome.
Do you want to bring it? Do you want to sit up here? We make some room. He wants to come up and sit. There we go. We can just, there we go.
I can do some revolving chairs. I can move here.
There we go.
Me again.
There you
go. So Jamie O'Connell, the financial manager for Allied Shipbuilders. This is kind of our annual time to come to council. We do pay attention throughout the year, but just happens this is the most important meeting for us. Firstly, we would like to congratulate the CAO, David Stewart, on his retirement and 50 years of public service, 45 years in the North Shore. Like David, we've been here for a long time. We have you beat a bit. We're almost at 60 years now in the North Shore. So
he's not quite there.
Yeah,
but close.
He's getting close. As you know, since 2018, we have been facing unsustainable tax increases due to significant increases in our property assessments, with municipal tax rates not reducing proportionally, as well as the port property tax inequities. When looking at the competitive rates and comparing against the regional average, it is important to note that the rate really depends on the relative assessed values. I know that was a big part of the presentation. For example, it's not fair to state that the DMV's residential rate is better than Port Moody because assessed values in DMV are higher on average. For us, it's really the total tax paid that matters. In 2024, the DMV residential rate was 1.64, and major industry paid 13. Major industry uncapped paid 13.78. What we kind of gauge against some of our competitors. So in Richmond, we have competitors there. Their residential rate is similar to the district at 1.68. Their major industry pays 5.44. In Victoria, their residential is 3.06. Their major industry pays 11.24.
Can you slow down a little bit? Because I am taking notes.
Okay, yeah, no, I will try my best. I'm trying to get it all within 3 minutes.
Can you email that to us as well? Do you
Sure.
have that written down? Email that.
Yeah, I will.
Sorry, Victoria 3.06.
Victoria 3.06, and major industries at 11.24. After rightfully moving away from the line of thought during, like in 2021 tax rate workshop, there was a line of thought about tax relief that major industry was getting. It seems like in the presentation material, it's moving back into that direction. As probably the most stable property in the class, we've been pretty stable for 60 years. What we have seen in the last 7 years is our municipal taxes alone have more than tripled from 181,000 in 2017 to this year projected to be 565,000, and that's with option 1, which is a 13.1% increase this year. This is after we fought for years to stabilize property taxes after we had significant increases since the mid-1980s when the province changed their law in terms of the cap they had between major industry and residential.
Draw to a close.
Yes. Whilst we would like to see the district go with recommended option number 1, we are very concerned about the tone of the addendum. The major industry is not paying its fair share. As you start doing the tax strategy in 2025, we encourage you to engage us and consider our tax share. So we have 1.2% of assessed value. We contribute about 10% of taxation revenue. The services that we consume, we hope that you continue to try to resolve the port property tax inequities. And then finally, we're hoping to conclude some of the assessment appeals for our class.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
Jamie.
I didn't get your name and who you're with.
Jamie O'Connell,
Jamie O'Connell.
the financial manager for Allied Shipbuilders.
Thank you.
Yes.
And this is also the public workshop, so there will be minutes produced from the staff as well.
Okay.
And it's a recording, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can assure you, we continue to work incessantly to try to resolve this important property tax.
Yes.
It's horrible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Would anybody else like to address the meeting? Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any virtual hands either, so I'm gonna carry on. All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Donald for your presentation, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council and members of the public listening in tonight. Before I get started, I just wanted to mention that we have had some conversations about the presentation, and when it comes to how major industry is presented tonight, we're doing it to provide context and to allow council an opportunity to see where the tax relief has come from. It's not indicating that it's right or wrong, but this council has provided some tax relief to the uncapped major industry class in the past. And of course, as has been mentioned, the Ports Property Tax Act continues to be an issue for all municipalities that are impacted by it, as we're not collecting an appropriate amount of tax revenue. We've not been kept whole, as was the original intent of the legislation. There was some housekeeping corrections to the presentation. They don't impact the recommendation or the intent of the two options, but their LEO will be actually making the presentation in a couple of minutes, and he'll point those out when he gets to them.
So we can correct them on the slides?
Yeah, okay. So tonight, council has an opportunity to review how the 2025 property tax requirement will be distributed among the property classes. Staff have reviewed each of the property classes and are recommending even distribution this year to promote stability in these uncertain times. We're also looking forward to bringing about resolution to the issues we continue to experience within the major industry class. There are two groups of properties within this class, those that have their tax rates capped under the Ports Property Tax Act and generally ship raw materials, and those that are not covered under the Act and are referred to as the uncapped properties. It's not a level playing field, and the capped properties continue to receive tax relief through the Port Property Tax Act, which is resulting in lost tax revenue to this municipality and many others. And the uncapped properties continue to appeal their assessments, which creates instability within the class. Although we're hoping for these matters to be settled soon, we've seen some indications that may be the case soon. Later on in the presentation, a slide, as I mentioned, will show the value of tax relief provided to both the capped and uncapped properties, and this information is provided for context. As valuations of these properties is inconsistent at best, staff will be completing a review of comparable properties, much like was mentioned earlier by the member of the public, to get a better handle on how much tax revenue is being collected by these properties in comparison to others in the region. And we would do that on a per acre basis, which takes away the issue of the inconsistency in the assessed values. We also plan to work with the other municipalities impacted by the Ports Property Tax Act, along with key stakeholders to try to bring about change to the act. And finally, we'll be aligning the property tax strategy with the recently approved economic development strategy to address the remaining issues. You'll note in the presentation tonight, we're showing light industry, which is class 5, and recreational group, which is class 8, as higher than the regional average, which is generally how the strategy is intended to work. We're going to show ourselves at the regional average or lower to be competitive. And that's actually contrary to what we're talking about when it comes to major industry, only because of the inconsistency in how the assessed values come about. So that's our work. And we hope to come back to council in the fall to bring back better information and hopefully some resolution to the issues that we've been experiencing. With that, if we have the presentation ready, we were having some technical difficulty here earlier. If we're not able to get this going, I think we'll go to Rhonda and bring it up that way. Oh, got it.
Just give me 1 minute here.
Phew. Did you tell Rhonda that?
Yes,
Oh, just now.
we sorted it. Thanks.
Good evening, council, and welcome to the 2025 Property Tax Distribution Workshop.
Nice and loudy, Leo.
Okay. Tonight, along with Rick Daniluk, we have Daniel So, Section Manager Revenue Taxation with us. The objective this evening is to obtain council direction on how the property tax levy will be distributed among property classes prior to issuing of the tax notices this May. In this workshop, we will review the tax strategy and history, the consideration and impacts that affect rate setting, and the distribution of the tax levy options. In setting tax rates, the district has followed a tax competitiveness strategy designed to align its tax rates to the average within the region to maintain a competitive tax environment. During periods of strong new construction, reinvesting tax growth within the contributing property class to gradually reduce their tax rate is a key component of this strategy. In contrast, during periods of lower new construction, a modest shift of the tax burdens between the classes helps to stabilize the revenue without overburdening any one group. Maintaining balanced tax ratios are reflective of current valuations. It's key to ensuring that the long-term economic health and sustainability and maintaining fairness in the tax rates is imperative. For the current year, due to the uncertainty in the global economy stemming from US tariffs, the even distribution of the tax levy is recommended. The relative share of the tax requirement allocated to residential and commercial classes over a 5-year period is displayed in this slide. The residential class has slightly increased by 0.8% from 71.1% in 2020 to 71.9% in 2024. This is mainly due to the creation of new multifamily housing units as structured through the OCP. The business class, on the flip side, has decreased by 0.8% from 16.8% in 2020 to 16% in 2024, mainly due to commercial properties being transformed into mixed-use developments, with, of course, property valuation being redirected to the residential class. The major industry share has decreased due to the effects of the Forest Property Tax Act and ongoing assessment appeals within the class. That said, there is very strong demand for industrial lands within the region, and we're hopeful issues within the class will be resolved soon and new investments will continue to be made. Class 1 and Class 3 residential. In applying a fair distribution of the tax levy, there are specific issues that affect individual property classes that need to be considered. Due to cost increases for the completion of the North Shore wastewater treatment plant, the residential taxpayers' ability to pay will be impacted substantially due to higher utility fees being passed over by Metro Vancouver over the next 5 years. To assist in softening this increased burden, Council has supported stability, stabilizing the utility rates through the use of reserve funds, as well as advocating to extend the property tax Adjournment program to utility fees. The new provincial housing legislation will change how BC assessment calculates property valuation with respect to the creation of small-scale multi-unit housing. This new type of build has the potential to shift a greater proportion of taxes payable onto the single-family homeowner, creating new pressures not experienced before. Staff will be closely monitoring changes in valuation from BC Assessment this fall. Overall, the residential class is competitive within the region with a tax rate of $1.64 in 2024, which is well below the regional average. Based upon an even distribution of the tax levy, estimated 2025 property taxes for an average residential class property assessed at $1.7 million is provided in this slide. Municipal taxes increased by $152 from prior year. Other taxing authorities, including school taxes, are estimated to increase by $104 for a total property tax increase of $256 and a total property taxes payable of $5,125. Class 5 and 6 business. Within the light industrial and business classes, current assessment practices can impact fairness in taxation. Bill 28 was enacted by the province in November 2022. It enables municipalities to provide tax relief to Class 5 and 6 properties with disproportionate increases in property taxes due to increased development potential established through the OCP. Staff review the business class on an annual basis for opportunities to apply this new legislation and bring relief to properties affected by their development potential. This year's review confirmed that no properties are eligible for relief through this legislation. Through the Municipal Finance Reform Initiative, staff continue to advocate for relief on school taxes levied to business in the region as they continue to pay a disproportionate share of school taxes within the province. School taxes are based on assessed values and a single rate for business at the provincial level. As you can see from this slide, the tax rate for the light industrial class is currently higher than the regional average. Options 2 and 3 would correct this, but they're not recommended at this time. Based upon an even distribution of the tax levy, the estimated property tax bill for the median business property with an average assessment value of just over 1.5 million is provided for reference. Municipal taxes increased by $393, and school taxes and other agencies are estimated to increase by $365 for a total taxes payable of $758 and change from 2024. In total property taxes for this property at the median of $1.532 million is $14,545. Class 4 major industry. There are two major issues within the major industrial class. First, properties within the class not covered by the Ports Property Tax Act or the uncapped properties have seen their assessments substantially increase over the last 10 years, which, along with other issues, has driven ongoing assessment appeals and presented a risk to our tax base. Second, the Ports Property Tax Act has created issues with valuation of the capped properties, which has negatively impacted municipal revenues where these properties reside. These issues will be reviewed in the next 2 slides.
Just before you go, this is where one of the errors is. In the materials online, it's 1293 for the uncapped, but you can see it's been corrected to 1378 in the presentation.
Okay, so these slides are correct then,
Yes.
these
are
copies,
correct.
okay, but it's just what you sent us before.
The properties not covered by the Ports Property Tax Act are referred as the uncapped properties. Back in 2009, property owners in this class lobbied council to reduce the tax rate to incentivize investments. The tax rate at that time was $47.62 per 1,000 assessed value. Commencing in 2010, a council tax policy implemented progressive tax reductions in which improvements that were made were not taxed in order to lower the tax rate. In total, foregone tax revenue from this policy has grown to $2.5 million per year in tax savings for these properties. Since the end of the policy in 2017, substantial increases in land values, along with other factors, has led to ongoing assessment appeals. The increase in land value has also further reduced tax rates to the current $18.78 per thousand in 2024. While there still are a number of active assessment appeals within the class, staff do see potential for resolution of the issues we've been experiencing in the near term and will provide an update to council once the status of the outstanding appeals is confirmed. Properties covered under the Ports Property Tax Act are referred to as capped properties, as their tax rate is capped at $27.50 per $1,000 of assessed value. On this slide, you can see the effects of the land value set by regulation. At $390,000 per acre for the capped properties compared to the market valuations of land for uncapped properties at $4.7 million per acre, or 12 times the value. The capped properties are provided this tax relief through the Ports Property Tax Act. And one of the objectives of the act was to incentivize investments while keeping municipalities whole. As you can see in the table on the far right, that investments in the capped properties are trailing investments in the uncapped properties who are not receiving any subsidy. This disparity in valuations has resulted in lost tax revenue to the district estimated at $4.5 million per year. Resolving the issues created by the legislation is still top of mind for the impacted municipalities, especially in these challenging financial times. Class 8 recreation. The recreation class is a small class with only 0.2% of the overall assessment valuation and 0.3% share of the property tax levy. The class includes local ski hills, marinas, and the Capilano Suspension Bridge, to name a few properties allocated within this class. Reinvestment within this class is very small and doesn't occur as often as the bigger commercial classes or the residential class. The class has been monitored over the last 5 years, and as the tax rate has increased over the regional average, a small shift in the tax requirement is provided under options 2 and 3, but not recommended at this time. Even distribution. In assessing the considerations and impacts affecting taxes payable amongst all the property classes, an even distribution of the levy is recommended at this time to promote stability. Options 2 and 3 include tax shifts to the major industrial or residential classes to bring the light industry and recreational tax rates closer to the regional average. Our recommendation is that staff recommend that the property tax increase even distribution be endorsed, and that staff bring forward a 2025 tax rates bylaw reflecting this option. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I get that it was throughout the presentation in a few different areas, but responding to Mr. Connell's concern about his property taxes tripling over the last 7 years, wondering if you can sort of tie those themes together for that specific property in any material way.
I'm sure Elio has more information than me in looking at the changes in assessed value this year. That particular property was on the higher end, as was noted in the memo. And Elio, you might have more to add about what changes you've seen in this assessed value. I know we've looked into it a little bit with BC Assessment for this role, but we haven't heard anything back yet.
So, Your Worship, what we've seen over the last 5 years is that there has been property tax, there has been property sales on the North Shore that have led to revaluation. One that happened in 2018, and 2 others, one that happened in 2020, and 2 others this year. So we found that over the last 5 years, that assessment values themselves have helped to keep the tax rates low. But in saying that, there has been increases to the individual properties on the waterfront. And that, in effect, the assessment increases have kept their taxes a little bit higher.
And there's variability in those assessments. I think that's what's driving those big shifts.
So since we haven't been shifting much tax between the classes, particularly that class, and we haven't been largely raising the rate beyond done with the other classes, is it safe to say that the other members of that class are the benefactors of the tax increase on Allied? And if so, who's benefited the most by the new valuations that have caused them to pay less tax within the class? Do we know?
I believe Daniel has those numbers. I'm not sure if he has them at his fingertips, but we did
Or what's
look
the nature of
and
it? We're obviously not gonna get the call from the person who gets a 20% reduction in property taxes, but that must be happening within the class somewhere.
I don't believe the reductions were to that extent, but they were definitely close to zero in a couple of cases.
But they've tripled in 7 years, so there must be some significant savings within the class since we haven't been shifting to or from the class. I don't know if you have any additional numbers on that.
That's generally how it works, that the taxes are levied to the class level, and the variability amongst the properties accounts for those types of changes if they are that significant.
So as their piece of the pie has tripled, but we haven't actually grown the pie significantly.
No,
Somebody else in the class, probably a number of properties, are actually paying a much more modest rate of tax.
Can we find that out?
we can certainly analyze that and
Which just
Report
goes to
back.
say that the unfairness is in the assessment.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, we're
it's not necessarily at class level or with our taxation burden, it's at the assessment level.
that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem we have right now.
Councilor, you're
Just on that, I mean, the sales were ERCO, 145 million. And then McKean just sold in February for another additional, for a second time. And that was what rose the class in the first place, when McKean was first sold. And so now they've increased that sale price by 30 million in 6 years, I think, since they originally, or 7 years since they originally bought it. So, you know, there is, I think we'd be very interested in seeing where it has gone down. I think the other question that Allied might have is, what do they get for the tripling of their taxes in 7 years? You know, what are we getting? And I know that we've had presentations this year in regards to what things we're going to be looking at to cut back our budget, and how is that going to affect industry? Industry, you know, we're wanting to maintain these jobs, and we've always held that major industry and light industry is the jobs that we need to be maintaining and holding on to, because they're actually the ones that pay the wages that allows people to live here. That was a one-time thought. I'm not sure if that still exists at 54 an hour if you're working, you know, on the dry dock at Allied. Even they can't afford to live here at $54 an hour. You know, I don't know if the fact that this is a nice place to live is going to do much for their ability to maintain themselves in this location. I mean, we are a port. We need to maintain our port status. They have deep water where they work. And it is in our best interest to keep these big businesses in this community to help us. But when they're paying taxes, and they're paying school taxes, they're paying the utilities, they haven't got those bills, that roll hasn't come in yet, I don't think. Metro's utility bill. You do it quarterly, right. So I think the question is, what do they actually get for the taxes that they pay?
Through your worship, Councillor Murray, we could certainly look at our asset management plans through that kind of lens to look at the industrial properties and the infrastructure that's supporting.
Because I think we have
but to be clear, just because you pay more doesn't mean we give you more in services necessarily. It's an unfair system, but it's meant to recognize what the class is contributing.
Absolutely, I'm just mentioning that we can look at those infrastructure plans through that lens, just to make sure that they're kept in
And to
condition.
be fair,
McKean got an overpass, right? Like that area is one of the.
They got
reasons
quite a
they had
lot.
A big uplift in that side of
Yeah.
the western portion of the
But what have we done down on the east side of Seymour? Or have we cut back our services down there? Have we cut back on road maintenance? Have we cut back on snow removal, for instance? I'd like to understand where we're cutting back and how it's affecting businesses within this community. I think that the assessments, obviously, I mean, we've been hearing every year that we're getting close. And I don't know, I feel there's optimism in Ilio's voice, that we're getting close to some sort of revelation in regards to the Port Property Act and how we're dealing with these capped and uncapped properties. The provincial government, Mr. Stewart, do you have anything more than what we've already stated in regards to?
I'm not as optimistic.
Oh, okay, so there we go.
Very honest.
This is on the anniversary or the beginning of his retirement, so spit it out. Yeah, tell us what you really think.
It's a really disproportionate system that was supposed to be ended a number of years ago. It's hurting some of our businesses. And all we can do is continue to lobby the provincial government and say, this is really, really unfair. You just have to look at some of the numbers. And it's actually quite incredibly unfair at the end of the day. It shouldn't be continued. It's very unfair.
You know, maybe we need to bring these businesses together and present collectively, because if we lose these businesses, I think the impact is going to be massively significant to us. Mr. Danilek is responsible for making sure that we have the revenue that we need to go forward with our plans and our official community plans. But often, councillors, or I feel like I'm in a bit of a conflict, because you're trying to get the most amount of money, and as somebody representing the community and residents and businesses, I'm trying to make it so it's fair for them, so their taxes aren't skyrocketing. So we are in a bit of a conflict. And, the drive of our OCP is significant. And how is that OCP impacting all the classes? And where are those costs coming from? I'll stop now. I'll come back because I'd like to delve into some of the points that Mr. O'Connell made in regards to looking at policies that we sort of moved away from, and the perspective that maybe we're going into that direction again, given the challenges that we face. Thank you.
Mr. Dowell?
I just wanted to mention that one of our foundation principles, of course, at the staff level is around fairness. We start with value for money and quickly go to fairness amongst the taxes, utilities, and user fees that we use to generate revenue. But we can look at, especially the major industry class, with the aim to be more fair. We just need to dig into it.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you very much. To directly answer the question, I do support even distribution in this case, and thank you to Finance for all of the hard work in the matter. I mean, there seems to be two moving parts, which would, if those parts weren't moving or were resolved, would allow us to take a harder and better look at a reassessment as between the different classes. First is the assessment appeals. And it may be that the outcome of those appeals could address much of Mr. O'Connell's issue, assuming that there's a lowering of the assessment. Much of what Mr. O'Connell has presented in this workshop and prior workshop pertains to the valuation and the disparity in that valuation compared to other members of the uncapped class. So it would be very good for us to have those appeals resolved. And Councillor Muir raised the issue, but do we think we're going to get that in the next 12 months?
Well, we're seeing some positive signs. There's still outstanding claims, but Elia?
Yes, we're awaiting a decision on a property assessment appeal with regards to contamination on a property on the waterfront. And we're hoping to have a decision within the next 6 months.
Because depending on the outcome of that, that might take us some way towards a better understanding of where we're at. And then there's this Port Property Tax Act that it's been around ever since I first arrived coming on 11 years ago. I mean, I was speechless when it was presented to me then, and I'm still speechless. I understand that the uncapped properties, there's an 11 times disparity between the uncapped and the capped in terms of valuation. The one tax group that's not going to be paying a significant tax increase in this budget is the capped properties, heavy industry.
So unfair.
And if I understand it right, they're going to be paying what, 2.5% or something? And
Ellie?
there is some cost of living allowance, I
It's
understand.
tied to inflation. Yeah.
They are set at inflation plus 1% on a yearly basis for their assessment value increase. So their assessments have increased in 2025 by about 4.5%.
Okay, well, they're going to be paying the smallest increase, and there's obviously a very significant disparity. I mean, this is legislation that goes back to 2005. I mean, so much has changed in our political climate, economic climate since 2005. So again, if that issue could be resolved, then I think we're probably in a position to meaningfully address a redistribution, perhaps. And I won't prejudge that redistribution, but it does seem that until those issues are resolved, we're not going to be very happy with there's going to be people in our community, certainly in the heavy industry side, that are not going to be very happy with the distribution. And so I really do look forward to those matters getting addressed by the time we're talking about it a year from now, hopefully. I mean, what steps are underway with respect to the Port Property Tax?
We've had a number of discussions with the province. We were assured that they would be under consideration. We raised the issue time and time again. We raised it in the press. And it really comes down to some political pressure, to be quite honest, at the end of the day. And, you know, I mean, there's a problem with the way the assessments are done. And then there's a problem with the way the assessments are applied.
Right.
And, you know, so there's a double whammy here for our port industries, and it's really quite obviously unfair.
Well, I'd be very interested in an advocacy plan of council. Perhaps Mr. O'Connell can join us in our advocacy with respect to the Port Property Tax. Because from my point of view, we do this every year, and it always comes down to the same issue until that issue is resolved. There's $4.5 million, which, according to our finance department's calculation, is being lost to the district, and is having necessarily to be made up by other taxpayers. I'll leave it at that, except to say that I really think we should initiate some kind of an action plan with respect to both those issues to try and finalize them before another year passes.
Is Mr. Wardell still working on it? Is he?
Mr. Wardell is retired.
I know, but I thought he was going to continue some advocacy in regards to.
I don't think he has at this point. We just continue to
Right.
do what we can. As an organization, we have a little more status than a retired CFO at the end of the day. So we'll continue to push. We hear positive overtures from the province that they want to look at it. We just haven't seen the action.
I wonder if we can strike a subcommittee from this council to create an advocacy plan.
What other partners across the region would it be appropriate to include too?
The biggest one, hands down, is Prince Rupert. Prince Rupert has the highest ratio of capped to uncapped. It's so bad that, you know, every time they try to raise a little bit of funds to resurface a road or clean something up, they overwhelmingly are putting the burden on only 20% of their properties, rather than the heavy industry portion of it. So they're the natural leader in it, that they're the most affected. We're the second most affected in the province, but for communities like Richmond, Burnaby, Port Coquitlam, they don't have nearly as high a ratio of capped to uncapped.
Yeah, and that's the problem, council, is that there's a real disparity in the region as to the impact of this particular legislation. I can't and I won't disclose action that we're taking away from to try to organize the region to get some kind of pressure on the province. But I can't disclose that as well.
And it's just not working, that's the problem, and I do feel that what you say about political pressure is needed is where we've arrived at.
This was done for politics. It was major industry lobbying the provincial government at the time.
Yeah, 2005,
Yeah.
2004,
Yeah, that's why it first started.
21 years ago. So much has changed.
Yeah, so, how could we move this forward in
We
terms
can-
of action?
We can talk about that specific issue of creating a subcommittee or some other working group to be able to address it. I think the first step on that has to be talking to our two local government MLAs.
Of course.
But we've had the conversation with MLA Ma before. I don't remember specifically talking to MLA Chant about it.
I have,
You have, okay. But,
but not in any form.
but MLA Ma has been briefed on the issue.
And it's like everything else, right? You have to have a plan and approach it with a united voice and get some other partners involved. And so we need to be able to strategize about that and put something in place. So again, like, how do we move that out of this room, out of this moment, into a place going forward where we're taking some action?
Okay, Mr. Stewart, we haven't set up a subcommittee on other items. I'd rather have the whole of council be welcome to participate ideally, but, can we have staff report back on, advocacy options to us?
We can do that, and certainly we can, in camera meeting, I can brief you more fully on who's involved in these.
That would be
these
great.
Discussions
Yeah.
and who's not. And you're right, Prince Rupert is an example, but I mean, if you have, for example, a city like Vancouver, they're quite indifferent to this because of the size of their holdings and everything. Anyway, I can brief council, more than willing to do that. I don't need a resolution to do that, we'll do that.
Yeah, there was a former mayor of Prince Rupert who had quite a lot of energy for this, and then unfortunately they didn't stick around, so it probably hasn't been handed off very well, but we can check in on that as well. So we've got a briefing for council and camera. Councilor Muir, you indicated you wanted to add further comments. I have no one else on the speakers list.
Well, I just wanted to go back and just, Mr. Daniluk, I sent you some of the information earlier this afternoon in regards to looking at sort of those prior policies. And can you just comment on the comment in that information that I sent you? In regards to looking back at the tax increases for major industry. I know you've stated that we're about fairness, but we're in a situation as well, given our taxation, given the tariffs that we're facing, however that rolls itself out from day to day. How are we going to be addressing our future budget needs?
Through your worship, Councillor Murray, we have received direction from council already about the next budget and what acceptable levels are. And so we're going to be commencing those discussions soon about coming back with a lower tax rate for 2026. With respect to major industry, it is about fairness, and the inconsistencies in the assessments clouds that fairness. And so we're going to take a different approach, and we're going to look at updating the work that Mr. Iorio produced a number of years ago, where he looked at the tax revenue collected in the region on a per acre basis, which gives you a much better baseline for saying, is it fair or not? So we need to do that work and bring that back to council.
I know we're at a really high level with these budgets, and we've gotten higher and higher and higher over the years. And, we've talked about, zero-based budgeting, or, we did that once a long time ago. I think there were some councillors that were interested in doing it as a regular practice. Metro Vancouver's board has talked about going to a zero-based budget so we can see where we are, because elected officials lose the understanding of the place where you began and where you got to, because it's cumulative over the years. And I think sometimes with the complexities that we deal with within our municipalities and within our budget systems, we don't often have the best understanding as to where we were, where we are right now, and where we're gonna go. And so I'm hoping that that's what the Metro Board is pushing right now, is trying to understand the complexity of that massive budget. And to get down to a place where we know what we're gonna need to move forward, and so we can make those decisions. I've talked to them about, their long-term capital plan, putting pressure on that, so we can see what the future is, even though we know that number's gonna be, scary. But I think we have to do more of that here as well, to understand the impacts to our businesses, our major and light industry, our residential community, and how we shift that around. Will that be part of these discussions? I certainly hope this, given the situation that we're in, we're not going to do sort of the status quo budgeting process that we've done in the past. We're gonna have more details. I don't know why I'm looking at you. You're not gonna be, well, you might be here.
Mr. Stewart.
Might be here.
Mr. Stewart?
I just want to remind council, and I'm going to go back a couple of decades now. We've had basically a 2-in-1 tax increase, some of the lowest
No, I know.
tax increases in the region for a long, long time. The last couple of years have been an anomaly, and I think we're all sensitive to that, and I really do appreciate it. I don't know how we're going to get out of that, but I do know that we've got pretty clear instructions that we should be minimizing the tax increase for next year, and we will be working very diligently as staff to deliver that too.
So I guess the question that companies like Allied would have would be, is finding that savings for the residential, is that going to be found by increasing the taxes to some of the major industry? Given that over the years, we've seen them as a source of huge revenue for us in regards to the taxes that they pay. And the fact that they don't consume the same amount of services as the rest of the classes. So we used to talk about that all the time. We used to use that as a way to justify the maintaining that heavy industry. And I remember when we were talking CanExis. CanExis was a very challenging, when we rezoned that property down on Dollarton. My position was we need to keep companies like that because they are the ones that are supporting a huge amount of how we exist in the district, because they pay a huge amount of taxes, they have well-paying jobs, but they do not consume the same amount of resources that the rest of the residential class, for instance, would take up, or even the business community. So I think we need to sort of go back to that place where we used to be and understand. I think we've only shifted the class. I think we've only shifted it once, but maybe twice. We shifted it for small business at one point.
It's been very little.
Very, very, very little. And that, if we're gonna cut those taxes back, that means we're gonna have to pull back on some stuff. And I think we need to understand what we're pulling back on and have it, and be part of that conversation, not just at that high level to get to a number. All right, those are my.
Mr. Dowling?
Through your worship, Councillor Murray, I would say to that when we looked at the 5-year tax outlook this year, it gave you a glimpse into what those outer year pressures might look like. When we look even further, we are going to have to start tightening to bring that 10-year budget into balance, just like Metro Vancouver, just like TransLink, and we need to start having those tough conversations.
And we've got to look at a level of sustainability too, because is business sustainable versus expanding, development? Development has been paying for a lot of the things that we're trying to renew over the years. That's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable source of revenue because there's going to be a ceiling. And so then how do you ultimately allow that sustainability to continue? Business, how long's Allied been on the North Shore? 60 years. C-SPAN, Kate's, close to 100, how long?
Something else I know has been around for 60 years.
Oh, whatever. It's my birthday next week, and he knows that because his birthday is the next day. Yes, and 60 is only a number, and I'm happy that I got to 60, thank you very much. So Allied and I were the same age. There we go.
Aren't you 61?
Oh, Herman, go away. Jesus. Anyway, yeah, no, see, you've lost my train of thought now. I did that on purpose.
Way to go, Herman.
Yeah, no, the mayor. Anyway, so we do need to look at all of that. We do need to look at what's sustainable. Do we want to, are we looking at protecting companies like Allied, heavy industry, light industry, port? We're one of the, we're the biggest port in this country. Is that what we're looking at? Or are we looking at things that are not sustainable? Because, shipbuilding, given, what we're facing and how we're going to rethink this country's economic position in the world, given our neighbors to the south. We have to band together and look to the future like never before.
Thank you. I have no further speakers on the matter. Prepared to move option 1. Is there a seconder for option 1? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Any other discussion on option 1? Okay, prepared to call the question. All those in favor of option 1? Contrary minded? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Stewart, any updates you want to give, or?
No, Your Worship, we will come back with a briefing, to council on our options. I can say that we've been at this for a long time.
Yeah, we say it every year.
I do
And their
not,
taxes keep going up.
I do not understand why we're not getting the kind of relief that I think we should be getting, because it is a matter of fairness. And so we'll continue, but we'll provide a brief to council as to what some of the options might be in terms of advocacy.
Yeah, I think it is going to be political in the end, and maybe in addition to advising on advocacy options, which I think will probably, I think that is just going to be focused on political and tactics used. I think that it would be helpful for me anyway to have a report that provides, key points in this to help me understand it.
Have we ever brought it up at a UBCM when we have the meetings with ministers? And would that be an appropriate venue to have?
It's just an unlevel playing field because
I
we're not
understand.
all
I'm just wondering.
facing capped and uncapped. That's the
Understand.
problem.
We've had direct meetings.
What other ways we
with-
could approach
We've had direct meetings with ministry staff
Yeah,
on
we
UBCM.
have.
Uh,
It never does anything.
We did have Brent Ricker a few years ago dug deep into it with us, went over everything, and then presented a newspaper article about it. But again, it still just isn't capturing the public interest, and so it's really inside baseball kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, we can definitely use UBCM time to set up further ministry meetings. We have a different finance minister than before. I think we started the discussion with Carol Taylor, if I recall, which was a long time ago. So
Yeah.
but that could be a discussion we can have when we have our in-camera.
Yeah, I do remember meeting with Carol.
Yeah.
Because we wanted a break for the ski hills. She raised rates.
She sneezed.
The
How'd
ski
that
hill
work
one still bugs me though,
No kidding.
because they've done a tremendous amount of investment up across in other places, but the actual amount of property tax they pay is.
So small.
Councilman.
You mentioned this earlier. I got some information. There's 12 municipalities that are covered by the Port Property Tax Act, and there's, I think, 38 folios. So are we coordinating with those other at all? Are we having any discussions with them?
Mr. Dale.
You can't say?
I don't want to say at this point, but in the in-camera briefing, I will let you know who is part of this consortium, because there are other tools that we have in the toolkit, which we haven't used for, I would say a decade or so, which we're now considering. So, but I'll brief council.
We have in the past.
Yeah.
You also have people on council now who have better relationships with the current government.
Yeah, it was a BC Liberal government when it started too. So we've had both. And we've had government MLAs versus opposition MLAs, but
I haven't found the politics have changed.
No, they still maintain it. They haven't been quick to change anything.
Mr. Milburn, at the tail end of the last meeting, you wanted to mention that we do have some progress on the business licensing for the short-term rentals. Where are you at for that?
Yeah, just on a different topic, council, a very brief update. Council gave the short-term rental bylaws approval tonight. And just a quick update, we started receiving applications on the 15th of this month. And we have 214 applications so far. We expect more will continue to come in as we head towards the provincially set deadline of May 1st to submit an application. And of course, now that council's approved the bylaws, we'll be processing those applications. Thank you.
Hasn't that
Very
deadline
busy
been
week ahead.
extended to August 1st?
They have to submit their application and receive an electronic confirmation from us that they've submitted their business license application, which we're providing electronically. This is all done online electronically. And then we have, and the applicants have until August 1st in which to receive the license. So
Right.
we have time. It's not a crunch. They have to be issued by May 1st, but they do have to apply if they would like to stay registered on the online platform.
But you could have another 500 licenses over the next 10 days,
We could.
theoretically.
We could.
Which would be a very interesting conundrum.
10 days, could be quick. All right, any other updates? Okay. Thank you all very much for your participation in the workshop. Thank you, staff, for the preparation of the of our materials. Councillor Ma.
One quick update, the North End District Library celebrated its 60th birthday last week, so that's.
Okay, that's right.
Be the librarian,
Tell you
I like
about
shipyards.
Enid during Rob and setting up the library. There's a book about it. It was for the 50th anniversary, but we have the book. Okay, thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
We got lots